Y'all, I don't know how long this video is about to be, so just bear with me as I try my best to articulate this, okay? So for those of you who don't know me or don't know anything about my story, I'm gonna give y'all some context real quick. Back in 2019, I got sober from drugs and alcohol. I've been sober for over 4.5 years now. Since my quote unquote awakening back in 2019, I got some would call obsessed with spirituality, the arcane, all things to do with spirit and coming back to myself, basically. Man, it's so crazy to think that for most of my life, I mean, I was 27 when I had my awakening, and now I'm 31. And that for most people, they go their whole lives without truly understanding their inner selves. And for most of us, we're still barely scraping the surface. This video is really about my observations, my experimentations, and my implementations, and what I've observed within the whole collective as a unit, as an energy, and how I can use my observations to help the next person on their own journey. So when I think about the spiritual journey, I think about, I'm going to use a metaphor. So think of Jack and Rose on the Titanic, right? The Titanic ship is the ego, and we're all on the ego. We have a masculine and feminine energy. We're all on this ego ship. We're heading out on this journey, right? And we're treading into icy, cold, dark waters beneath the surface. And we see icebergs all around us that, you know, you've all seen the you've all seen the image of that iceberg on the internet somewhere or in videos somewhere where you see like 10% of the iceberg on top of the surface of the water and 90% of the iceberg on the bottom of in the water, basically underneath the surface. That is like the direct metaphor for the conscious and unconscious mind, and how much we are actually able to see, hear, feel, in our daily lives, and how much the unconscious actually runs our lives, and how we can see the unconscious, how it runs our lives is by looking backwards in retrospect. So, taking time for isolation and self reflection is necessary on the spiritual path because it's all about becoming more conscious of our shadow. And I know there's so much like confusion and misinformation about shadow work and what that really means. And for me, I really got lost in the sauce a little bit along the way. And, I was kind of like throwing shit on the wall to the wall and seeing what stuck, but a lot of it didn't stick. A lot of these people don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to anything practical about how to actually do shadow work and what that means. So why I said looking back in retrospect is very helpful is because you can see how your patterns, how your behavior, your unconscious material is submerging or merging into the conscious through all of the stuff that you've been through. I mean, the sad truth about life is that like so much of our lives are self-inflicted wounds, right? All these wounds that we have been through, all this trauma, a lot of it has been because of our some of the decisions that we've been making, right? So what I am seeing a lot of people do in the spiritual communities is mass spiritual bypassing, which is basically doing anything but looking or trying to look at the shadow, doing anything but looking in the depths of our own psyche to see where we're falling short, where we are causing some of the things in our lives that are these repeating patterns. I'm going to go ahead and quote a book that I've been reading because this author does a much better job at articulating this point in written text than I can at spoken word. And I'll plug the book at the end. It says, in modern Western society, we have reached a point at which we try to get by without acknowledging the inner life at all. At all. We act as though there were no unconscious, no realm of the soul, as though we could live full lives by fixating ourselves completely on the external material world. We try to deal with all the issues of life by external means, making more money, getting more power, starting a love affair, or accomplishing something in the material world. But we discover to our surprise that the inner world is a reality that we ultimately have to face. Now, I don't know about you guys, but early in my journey into spirituality, I got into some pretty woo woo, like new age like topics and mindsets and practices that I since have discarded and just gone another direction. And one of the things that has really grounded me into a sense of you know applying spirituality on a practical level is getting into Carl Jung, researching the archetypes that he coined, and also just studying about the unconscious mind and how it affects our lives and how we can incorporate practices to help us understand ourselves on deeper and deeper levels. Because the more I researched into some of these like woo woo influencers and spiritual gurus, the more I found flaws with so many of them. And the farther down that rabbit hole I would go, the less I feel I could relate to the world around me. And the less you feel like you can relate, the more you start to adopt fringe mentalities and fringe ideologies. And you all know what I mean by that. Oh, we're ascending to 5D. Drink colloidal silver until you turn blue. Go live in an ashram in another country far away from your family. Join a cult. We start wearing these like bohemian, I don't know, clothes that are very like new age, I don't know, hippie type clothes. We all know the type of clothes. We all start adopting language of the new age culture. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with these, but there is definitely a stereotype at play here, and there's definitely tropes at play. And it's nice to know, like, once you're aware of these things, that these things are here and trendy. And then you realize, wait, this is just high school all over again. If I do the right things and wear the right things and pretend like I talk the talk instead of walk the walk, then maybe I'll find the right people. You know what I'm saying? Maybe then I'll be accepted. But I'm just here to tell you that there's things readily available for you. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of that stuff. I'm just saying that there's research and methods and information readily available to you to really dive in and get to know yourself, this path of individuation, before you just kind of go off the deep end and have to do what I did, which is kind of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. Actually, just don't join a cult. Thank me later. All right, y'all. So this book goes on to say Carl Jung observed most of neuroses, the feeling of fragmentation, the vacuum of meaning in modern lives, results from the isolation from the ego mind from the unconscious. Every person must live the inner life in one form or another, consciously or unconsciously, voluntarily or involuntarily. The inner world will claim us and exact its dues. If we go to that realm consciously, it is by our inner work, our prayers, meditations, dream work, ceremonies, and active imagination. If we try to ignore the inner world, as most of us do, the unconscious will find its way into our lives through pathology, our psychosomatic symptoms, compulsions, depressions, and neuroses, which leads us to the process of individuation. There's a difference between individuation and individuality. Western culture puts so much emphasis on individuality as opposed to community because it separates you. Individuation is the term Jung used to refer to the lifelong process of becoming the complete human beings we were born to be. Individuation is our waking up to our total selves, allowing our conscious personalities to develop until they can include all the basic elements that are inherent in each of us at the pre-conscious level. This is the actualizing of the blueprint. Oh my God. Why should we call this individuation? Because this process of actualizing oneself and becoming more complete also reveals one's special individual structure. It shows how the universal human traits and possibilities are combined in each individual in a way that is unlike anyone else. The book I've been reading from is by Robert A. Johnson. It's called Inner Work: Using Dreams and Active Imagination for Personal Growth. If y'all want to, just give me some feedback on what you thought about this video. And if you want me to share more practical tips and information that I've gained throughout my journey. I know this has been long. Thank you for bearing with me. I love you.